Gopichana Palapa Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yamunatira Panachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaratari Yasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 77, text 37, which leads directly into the next chapter, Canto 10, chapter 78, and we'll read text 1 through 2. They're interconnected. So text 37. Tasmin nipatite pape, shobe chagadayahate, nedudundu bayo rajan, divide ganerita, sakinam apajitim kurvan, dantavakro rusabhyagat, tasmin nipatite pape, shobe chagadayahate, nedudundu bayo rajan, divide ganerita, sakinam apachitim kurvan, dantavakro rusabhyagat, tasmin nipatite pape, shobe chagadayahate, nedudundu byayo rajan, divide ganerita, sakinam apachitim kurvan, dantavakro rusabhyagat. Please chant. Tasmin nipapite pape, shobe chagadayate, nedudundu bayorajan, divide ganerita, sakitam apachit purvan, dantavakro rusabhyagat, tasmin nipapite pape, shobe chagadayehate, nedudundu bayorajan, divide ganerita, sakinam apachim kurvan, dantavakro rusabhyagat, tasmin nipapite pape, shobe chagadayahate, nedudundu bayorajan, divide ganerita, sakinam apachitim kurvan, Dantavakro Rusha Byagat. Thank you very much. The word for text 37. Tasmin, he. Nipatite, having fallen. Hape, sinful. Shope, the Shopa vehicle. Cha, and Gardaya, by the club. Hate, being destroyed. Nedu, there resounded. Dundu Baya, kettle drums. Rajan, O King Parikshit. Divi, in the sky. Devaganam, by groups of demigods. Irita, played. Sankinam, for his friends. Apachitim, revenge. Kurvan, intending to carry out. Dantavakra, Rusa, angrily. Apiyagat, ran forward. And the translation by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada for this text 37. With the sinful Shalva now dead, and his Sherpa vehicle airship destroyed, the heavens resounded with kettle drums played by groups of demigods. Then Dantavakra, wanting to avenge the death of his friends, furiously attacked the Lord. So thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada in the 10th canto, 77th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Krishna Slays the Demon Shalva. And then proceeding to the next next chapter. So this is chapter 78 of the 10th canto. Let's see if the light is good here. It's usually terrible. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, I think I need the chandelier light if I'm going to read the intro to the chapter. The chandelier light. Do you think somebody would be kind enough to race upstairs and put the chandelier light on? Sorry. I know, it's all right. Yeah, today's a little overcast, so the light is not very good in the temple room. So this chapter is entitled The Killing of Dantavakra, Vidurata, and Romaharshan. Thank you very much. So this chapter relates how Lord Krishna killed Dantavakra and Vidurata, visited Vrindavan, and then returned to Dwarka. It also describes how Lord Baladev killed the offensive Romaharshan Sutta. Intent upon avenging the death of his friend Shalva, Dantavakra appeared on the battlefield with club in hand. Lord Krishna took up his own club and came before him. Dantavakra then insulted the Lord with harsh words and struck him a terrific blow on the head. Without budging in the slightest, Lord Krishna bludgeoned Dantavakra's chest, shattering his heart. Dantavakra had a brother named Vidurata, and he became distraught at Dantravakra's death, taking up his sword, Vidurata confronted Sri Krishna, but the Lord cut off Vidurata's head with his Sudarshan disc. Lord Krishna then visited Vrindavan for 2 months, and finally he returned to Dwarka. When Lord Baladev heard that the Pandavas and Kauravas were about to go to war, in order to remain neutral, he left Dwarka on the pretext of going on pilgrimage. The Lord bathed in sacred places such as Prabhas, Trisakupa, and Vishala. And eventually he came to the holy Naimisharanya forest where great sages were performing an extended fire sacrifice. While being worshipped by the assembled sages and offered a seat of honor, the Lord noticed that Ramaharshan Sutta, sitting on the speaker's seat, had failed to stand in deference to him. Greatly angered by this offense, Lord Balaram killed Ramaharshan by touching him with the tip of a blade of grass, of kusha grass. The assembled sages were disturbed by what Lord Balaram had done, and they said to him, quote, "You have unknowingly killed a Brahmana. Therefore, even though you are above the Vedic injunctions, we request you to set a perfect example for the general populace by atoning for the sin," close quote. Then Sri Baladev, following the Vedic maxim that one's son takes birth as one's own self, granted to Ramaharshan's son, Ugrasava, the position of speaker of the Puranas, and in accordance with the sage's desires, he promised Ugrasava a long life with unfailing sensory capacity. So that was the introduction. Oh, there's a little bit more. Wanting to do something more for the sages, Lord Baladev promised to kill a demon named Balvala, who had been polluting their sacrificial arena. Finally, on the sage's advice, he agreed to go on a year-long pilgrimage of all the holy places in India. And proceeding to texts 1 and 2. Shishuko vacha Shishupalasya salvasya Ondrakasyan durmati Paraloka gatanam cha kurvan parokshya soridam Eka padati sankruta padapani parampayan Padbyamam Maharaja Mahasattvya Drishyata. And the translation of text 1 and 2 is as follows by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sukadev Goswami said, acting out of friendship for Shishupal, Shalva, and Pundraka, who had all passed on to the next world, the wicked Dantavakra appeared on the battlefield in a great rage. O king, all alone, on foot, and wielding a club in his hand, the mighty warrior shook the earth with his footsteps. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurin Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Gadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shuta Padakamlam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhya Kripa Sindhubheva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Roma Padaswami Iti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimata Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so text 1 and 2 does not have any purport. But of course, there is a commentary from Srila Vishwanath. So, in commenting on text 37, which reads that, and these are the words, then Dantavakra, wanting to avenge the death of his friends, furiously attacked the Lord, close quote. Srila Vishwanath states, and these are Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's words, after performing the last rites for his friends like Shishupal, Dantavakra took revenge by angrily attacking Krishna, close quote. So that's the commentary of Srila Vishwanath. That Srila Vishwanath, he draws attention to the dutiful performance of the last rites on the part of Dantavakra for his fellow kings who had been slain by Lord Krishna. So this performance of rites is a topic that's looked at in a conversation between Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Because we've got this interesting situation that we're hearing Dantavakra is performing the last rites for his fellow kings who've been slain by Lord Krishna. So this is what Tamal Krishna Maharaj says. The Vedic rites and rituals are imperative for the beginning of human life, meaning beginning of human life means taking to the devotional path. And Srila Prabhupada's response when Tamal Krishna Maharaj makes his statement is to say, yes, and he quotes, Dharmena hina pashubhi samana. Every human society has some scripture and some ritualistic activities. Never mind whether Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jews, they have. That is the symptom of human civilization. You have no religion, no standing, then you're an animal. Never mind you accept this religion or that religion, it doesn't matter. But you must have a religion, otherwise a man is animal. That's Srila Prabhupada. So quite strong. I recently attended online post the event. A relative had left her body, and so I attended a rite, which was a Catholic rite for the deceased person, and I was appreciating greatly the particular way the rite was conducted. There was mention of the person's most prominent characteristic, which actually was a kind of deep faith. And there were prayers that were said that had to do with meeting the Supreme Personality of God, which in the Catholic tradition was just talking about God and coming to his, to his presence. And Then, interestingly enough, there was a section of asking for the forgiveness of that person's sins, which were inevitably had been done somehow or other. Um, and the whole rite actually put a kind of, one won't say a closure to the person's life, but a kind of acceptance of a life lived in a particular way and an acceptance of the person, the soul moving on. So I was appreciating. So, just hearing Srila Prabhupada's comment that that's what actually makes one a human, the fact that one has some religion. And it doesn't matter what the religion is. So some of the members, the family members at this particular rite, they read something of their particular connection with this relative. And the um, the interesting thing that I observed was in each case you felt that the person was deepening their kind of faith in the religious process just through actually going through the rite. So I'm just reflecting on the fact that here we're hearing of Dantravakra performing these rites for these slain kings that were his friends. Now, of course, there's a progressive course through accepting a religion. And Lord Krishna uses this very interesting analogy. He says, all purposes served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. So that's the key integral aspect of a religious process. And of course, Lord Krishna is referring to the Vedas. And that's from Bhagavad Gita 2:45. So for those who accept the Vedas, the rituals and sacrifices mentioned in the Karmakanda division, for instance, of the Vedas are meant to encourage gradual development of self-realization. And the purpose of self-realization is stated by Lord Krishna. So there's a purpose. You have to know the purpose behind your religion. And this purpose of self-realization is actually put very clearly by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, where he says, Sarvasya saham hadi sanivishito mata smritir gyanam apohanam cha vedascha sarvar aham eva vedyo vedanta krit vedavit eva chaham. I'm seated in everyone's heart, and from me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I'm to be known. Indeed, I'm the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So this development of self-realization, this acceptance of the purpose of rites and rituals requires an uncovering of this complex interplay between a man as a spirit soul and the presence of Lord Krishna as super soul. There has to be that interplay. And Srila Prabhupada gives a very profound explanation. I just thought it was super profound, so I'm going to read it. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him. And he forgets also about his past life. So it's very interesting. One doesn't recall, the individual spirit soul doesn't recall his past life, but he gets a remembrance of what he's supposed to be doing. And this is coming from super soul. And he gets the knowledge of how he's supposed to do it from super soul, but he's forgotten his past life. So it's very interesting, his explanation. And so this position of Lord Krishna is explained by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord is not only all-pervading, but is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. So whatever one is, however one's working and whatever one's working, one gets those rewards awarded to him by the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord's observing the work. So he provides the necessary rewards, even though the person is not aware that he's been directed by the Supreme Lord. The person is not aware that it's the Supreme Lord who's giving him the results of his work. So Krishna does it. Paramatma is there. So Srila Prabhupada highlights the worshipable aspect of Lord Krishna. That's what he's doing. He's worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. Because here you're reading that Dantavakra, he's actually performing these rites for these dead kings that were slayed by Krishna. But in actual fact, all that knowledge that he's having to draw from the Vedas in order to perform the rites, those Vedas themselves are an incarnation of Krishna. So he may not be aware of that, but that's the case. So Dantavakra, he came there to honor King Shalva with death rites. That was his purpose. It's a means to honor somebody by actually going through those rituals and those death rites. And that's what I was experiencing through hearing this particular rite being performed for a dead relative. It's a kind of honoring of the person in their lives. And there was a word that was used for that, apachitim. But it's actually, that word is translated as revenge. So here you're hearing that he's coming to honor King Shalva through performing the death rites, because you honor the person through performing the death rites. But the words that would indicate that he's performing the death rites is translated as revenge. So that honoring of his friend, King Shalva, was also, by doing it, he was returning the favor done by King Shalva of having tried to punish their mutual enemy, Lord Krishna. So he had a double purpose. You know, he wants to honor his friend, but why does he want to honor his friend, King Shalva? Because King Shalva tried to punish Lord Krishna. Because that was their mutual enemy, Lord Krishna. Now, this view of Lord Krishna as their enemy, it stems from a particular place. And this is how it's explained. And this is coming from a purport from Bhagavad Gita 16:18, Srila Prabhupada talking. Demoniac persons, being always against God's supremacy, do not like to believe in the scriptures. In addition, they are envious of both the scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we're hearing they definitely were envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but this Dantavakra, he's actually still going to draw from the Vedas in order to perform the ritual for his friend King Shalva. But here's the statement from Srila Prabhupada. There's actually an enviousness of the scriptures. So, very interesting. Now, a reason is given by Srila Prabhupada of a demoniac person being envious of the existence of Lord Krishna in the scriptures. The reason is that the so-called prestige and accumulation of wealth and strength. So that's the reason that there's this enviousness. There's so much pride in their own strength, their own wealth, their own accumulation of wealth, their prestige. So that's why they just can't accept the supremacy of Lord Krishna, that incredible pride. So this particular perspective, it was evidenced in King Shalva, who gives a reason for his not being able to tolerate the existence of Lord Krishna. So here, King Shalva, it comes out of his mouth when he was alive. He says to Lord Krishna, "You fool, because in our presence you kidnapped the bride of our friend Shishupal, your own cousin, and because you later murdered him in the sacred assembly while he was inattentive, today with my sharp arrows I will send you to the land of no return. Though you think yourself invincible, I will kill you now if you dare stand before me." So that's King Shalva talking to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there's like no acceptance of the supremacy of Lord Krishna. You think yourself invincible. I'm going to send you to the land of no return. I'm going to use my sharp arrows and kill you. So how dare you even stand before me? You know, that pride in their own prestige. In a similar mood of being proud of his strength, Dantavakra now, and these are the words, wants to avenge the death of his friends. He furiously attacks the Lord. So the other one tells him, "How dare you stand in front of me?" That's King Shalva. Here's Dantavakra. He furiously starts attacking Lord Krishna. And this is just after he's performed the rites of the funeral. So generally, you know, when you emerge after having attended funeral rites, there's a kind of very somber mood. There may be some sort of sense of bereavement for the loss of a person, because the very nature of the ritual and the rite was to draw attention to something of the life of that person. So one regrets the person is no longer there. So not in the case of Dantavakra. He finishes the rites and immediately he wants to avenge the death of his friends. He's going to actually avenge the death. So he furiously attacks Lord Krishna, and that is the text we read, 36, 37. And Srila Jiva Goswami, he comments that Dantavakra was foolish to come here to honor Lord King Shalva with death rites. To return the favor of Shalva, having punished their mutual enemy, Lord Krishna. And the reason it was foolish to Dantavakra to come there was because he was angry. That's the foolish part. And Srila Prabhupada gives further insight into demoniac thinking in general. And this is how he puts it, and this is from a purport in Bhagavad Gita 16:18. Srila Prabhupada says, he thinks himself independent and powerful in every action. He thinks that since no one can equal him in strength, prowess, power, or wealth, he can act in any way and no one can stop him. If he has an enemy who might check the advancement of essential activities, he makes plans to cut him down by his own power. So, welcome, good morning. So there's evidence of this kind of particular attitude that's described by Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So acting out of friendship for Shishupal, Shalva, and Pondraka, who had all passed on to the next world, the wicked Dantavakra appeared on the battleground in a great rage. So imagine, he's just done the rites, but he's in a rage. He's experiencing a great rage. All alone, on foot, and wielding a club in his hand, the mighty warrior shook the earth with his footsteps. So there's the description. And that was the text that we read 1 through 2. And Srila Vishwanath notes that these two verses describe how Dantavakra took revenge for the death of his friends. Although they weren't present, the friends, out of friendship, Dantavakra wanted to complete their death rites by killing Krishna. So that's what he saw as the completion of the death rites. Like generally, just because of this recent experience, the particular completion of the death rites is to honor the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, in these death rites, it was, referring to God or the Son of God. But in this case, Dantavakra is going to complete the death rites by killing the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he sees it. So you can see the mentality very clearly. So Srila Prabhupada states that Dantavakra became so agitated that he appeared on the battlefield without the proper arms and ammunition and without even a chariot. So imagine you're in such a state of rage that you don't even equip yourself properly to go and perform battle. His only weapon was his great anger, which was red hot. That's how Srila Prabhupada puts it. He carried only a club in his hand, but he was so powerful that when he moved, everyone felt the earth tremble. So that's Srila Prabhupada mentioning in Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the weapon of anger, it didn't serve Shishupal well. And we can hear a little bit about how the anger of Shishupal played itself out. So there was the occasion when Maharaj Yudhisthira had bathed Lord Krishna's lotus feet and then had honored the Lord with presentations of yellow silken garments and precious jeweled ornaments. And nearly everyone who was present joined their palms, exclaiming, "Obeisances unto you, all victory to you," to Lord Krishna. But Shishupal, however, he became infuriated upon hearing the glorification of Lord Krishna and his transcendental qualities. He stood up from his seat and angrily waving his arms, fearlessly spoke to the entire assembly harsh words against the Supreme Lord. And this is what he said, Shishupal: "How can you pass over the most exalted members of this assembly, topmost sages with powers of austerity, divine insight, and strict adherence to strict vows, sanctified by knowledge and worshipped even by the rulers of the universe? How does this cowherd boy, the disgrace of his family, deserve your worship any more than a crow deserves to eat the sacred rice cake?" So those are the words of King Shishupal. This extraordinary sacrifice had just been performed, the supremacy of Lord Krishna as the greatest personality that deserved the worship of everyone and that everyone acknowledged. But here's King Shishupal. What does he do? Why have you passed over the great sages? This is just a simple cowherd boy, the disgrace of his family. Why are you worshipping him? I mean, the inappropriateness of is mind-blowing. So the outcome was, and this is the outcome that I'm pointing to for King Shishupal, showing his anger and his disregard towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The sons of Pandu became furious, and together with the warriors of the Kaisha, Kaikaya, and Shinjaya clans, they rose up from their seats with weapons poised, ready to kill Shishupal. So that was how the response was to his showing anger towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead by his harsh words. So undaunted, Shishupal then took up his sword and shield in the midst of all the assembled kings and hurled insults at those who sided with Lord Krishna. He said, hurled the insults, so I'm not going into the details. At that point, the Supreme Personality stood up and checked his devotees. So Lord Krishna stopped them. And Lord Krishna himself took action. He angrily sent forth his razor sharp disc and severed the head of his enemy as he was attacking. And this is very interesting because just by Lord Krishna performing this action, he protected the Rajasuya sacrifice by immediately severing Shishupal's head in such a way that not a drop of blood was spilt within the sacrificial grounds. So this was highly intelligent on the part of Lord Krishna, because if he had allowed a savage fight to break out between his supporters and King Shishupal on the sacrificial grounds, those same sacrificial grounds would have been drenched in blood. And so it would have spoiled the whole sacrificial atmosphere. So that's just painting a picture of how the anger of Shishupal plays itself out. So there's a warning given by Lord Krishna regarding the usage of anger. And this is what Lord Krishna says. There are 3 gates leading to hell, or an abominable type of existence: lust, anger, and greed. Every man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Those are Lord Krishna's words, Bhagavad Gita 16:21. And Srila Prabhupada comments in this way: this is the beginning of demoniac life, when someone tries to satisfy the lust and not being able to do so, becomes angry, and greed arises. Hence the incapacity to understand the Lord's fullness. So it's just that very decision that's made to try and satisfy one's lust that leads to the anger and the greed. And that's what actually makes it incapable for that particular person to understand the Lord. So I painted the picture of how King Shishupal, even with an entire assembly, and that was an incredible assembly, it had the demigods present and all kinds of illustrious personalities. Even in that setting, he couldn't contain his anger against Lord Krishna, and he couldn't understand why everybody was glorifying Lord Krishna. And this is the explanation of Srila Prabhupada, that just trying to satisfy one's lust and not being able to do so brings about anger, and greed arises, and hence the incapacity to understand the Lord's fullness. And that fullness of Lord Krishna and why he's to be glorified is described that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he's the supplier and digester of foodstuffs. So even he's allowing the body to be able to be maintained properly. It's the fire of digestion. And he's the witness of the activities of the individual soul. And he's the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's just such an interesting juncture that we've come to, where we're hearing of this particular king who's actually performing Vedic rites, completely oblivious to the fact that the Vedas are basically an incarnation of Lord Krishna. He's actually come there to honor the dead kings, such as Shishupal, King Salva, through trying to end the life of Lord Krishna, as this being the completion of his honoring of his friends. So, and understanding this complete incapacity on the part of persons caught up in this kind of lustful, angry mood to actually understand that their own very lives are, there's that interplay with Lord Krishna going on all the time without their even understanding. So it's very fascinating. If there's any comments or thoughts or to expand our discussion, please feel free.
What you're thinking at this point, that um, the description of many of these demonic personalities who actually following Vedic, injunctions and rituals and performances, and they're very much situated within Vedic culture, and but the disconnect of the purpose. I mean, like yesterday we were discussing that the disconnect of the purpose of the Vedas, the rituals, the performances, the culture itself, and um, so you do all these things, but the end result, the purpose is your personal agenda or something that is personal. It's for
Yes.
my purpose, my
Yes.
benefit, or things like that. And the fact is that for doing that, you have to really erase Krishna.
Mm,
And
exactly.
when it comes, even directly when Krishna is mentioned or Krishna is telling us, but even if I don't have contact with Krishna and in the performance of religion, any religion, when I do those rituals for my, personal gain, then the whole thing is missed. The whole thing is and then that's what Srila Vyasadeva described as Kaitava Dharma, or cheating religion. So, and that's what Krishna says also, that the Vedas, tend to, in sort of in one sense, facilitate that. There's certain facility for that in the part of the Vedas, not the Vedas, but the part of the Vedas, the Karma Kanda part. So it is quite something that you're incapable of actually acknowledging and connecting with Krishna on a supreme personality when you have that attitude towards a process of religion.
Yes. Yes. Thank you very much for summarizing it. Yes, it's quite an extraordinary thing that there's. It's almost like when one observes somebody who's mentally unwell, the person has an incapacity to connect with another human being. And when one is hearing about persons who are caught in their own, satisfying their own lust and anger and greed, and these were kings, so occupying positions of rulership and overseeing the well-being of many citizens, that they actually are not connected or cannot connect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though they appear to be going through at least the Karmakanda section of the Vedas, the purpose of which is upliftment of consciousness, coming to the point of self-realization. Uh, so it's, and in fact, they would be classed according to the definitions given as having begun human life because they're performing the rituals. So they're not on a completely ignorant level, but there's a kind of dissociation which means that the lust and the anger and the greed is acting as a barrier to the connection with Lord Krishna. And in some sense, it's like, you know, persons who are not well mentally, I guess it's a similar kind of emotional blockage of some sort that prevents a connection with another person. So It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I was gonna add. Sorry, Vaishnav. I was just gonna add that that disconnect, or sort of in any level, because even as neophyte devotees, we experience some sort of a
Mm.
disconnect, and so that disconnect leads to nourished pride. Right? Nourished pride, you know, it's a disconnect that nourish our pride,
Ah,
and
yes.
with pride, then basically you close. Pride is opposite to humility, and humility is the key for a spiritual life. So then the disconnect increases and the pride increases. And we can find ourselves, even, as sadhakas, also, cultivating that disconnect. So,
Yeah.
there was nourishing our pride. So,
Yeah,
it's,
that's a very nice, just looking for personal application that, um, I mean, in the same way that the great pride in one's strength or prestige or wealth, which is what was highlighted about these various kings, whether it was King Shishupal, or King Shalva, is what actually created the blindness, the incapacity to actually see the supremacy of Lord Krishna, and taking it and applying it even as persons who are on the path of self-realization, actually still running into that difficulty of the disconnect. And it's the same key feature of the disconnect is pride. It actually acts as that barrier to connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And you brought up the point that one can even cultivate it. And that is what happens with pride. It's one tends to feed it. So yeah, the disconnect increases. But thank you for making the personal connection and application to those who are on the path of self-realization. Vaishnav Siddhananda.
Thank you, Mataji, for your class. Um, this line of thinking, you were speaking about how past life affects the actions, even coming from the super soul, and just the whole class. It was like allowing me to have a deeper appreciation for the spiritual master, which is like the super self personified, but it's not neutral. Actually pulling us in the right direction, or at least pulling me in the right direction. So I have a deeper appreciation for the fact that once we become initiated, if we, adhere to following following the spiritual master, then we'll be guided without that pull from past lives and or any type of like just with the spiritual master, we can follow and go in a straight line towards the goal. And then also a deeper appreciation for the Sanskrit language, which is so it destroys all the confusion. Like we have words like aham brahmasmi, I am spirit, soul, and then um, prakriti, and to be everything is for the Lord's enjoyment. Prakriti, aham brahmasmi. Um, for me personally, these are the type of words that kind of help me to stay on track, because the English words just it's so confusing. Sanatan Dharma rather than religion. Things like that are so much more helpful to stay on track, and it gives me a deeper appreciation for what the acharyas have gone through to be able to bring this to us. Unadulterated, it's just straight, clear.
Thank you very much for sharing something that's of assistance to you to stay on that path of self-realization. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Well, thank you very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.